Before we begin, I'd like to give you a brief disclaimer. Parts of this story are so unbelievable that you may, as I certainly did, question their validity. For that reason, I will be very specific about what can be supported by fact and what is purely speculation. And while the speculation is certainly entertaining, this is not science fiction. This is the shockingly true story of how I, an unassuming millennial with nothing to my name, was hacked in a fashion that I thought was reserved for billionaires and government dissidents. As one federal agent put it, I've never seen anything like this. We all think we have nothing to hide until we are truly exposed.
Attention to you, Max Lebow. It is urgent to see that there is on Havermeyer and South Fifth Streets a pale, frail bird who is looking up at you from the perch. What is known cannot be unknown, and of who we speak is forever alert. This is the new schism. Your leader takes missteps, and we see you there in the wake. Your war will be fought by our selection. Here, the rivers meet. Our countrymen gathers the tides. Xi Jianling and Ming Xiaoping are but two. The towers arise. Victory for the tiger.
What the fuck is that? That is the verbatim comment I received on an Instagram picture on March 6th, 2019 at 1:42 p.m. If you feel lost, confused, or downright flabbergasted by what you just heard, then you may have some idea how I felt. None of what was just said made any sense to me. A pale, frail bird? Who is my leader? There's a war? So let's take a step back and look at the facts with an objective observer, someone who knows both me and my antics, Joshua Thippett. So the first thing that ever happened was I was sitting on my green couch on Instagram or watching television or something, and I get this comment on an Instagram picture, and the first thing I see is the weird name, and I'm like, that's strange. Maybe it's just some bot who's trying to like get me to, gain more followers or something. And then I see Max Lebow. That's strange. My name is Lebow. And then the next sentence is my address. Havermeyer and South Fifth Streets is where I lived in Brooklyn. And obviously around that is a weird metaphor about a bird and all that shit. The way in which like the emotions started like lapping over me was just the fucking strangest experience I've ever had, because I saw my address, and the way that your brain fires is like the first thing I think is like, this is a friend, like, or who's been here recently, like who writes like this, who do I know in my life? That's what you assume, right? My heart rate starts to go up. I'm just kind of confused. Still have zero idea what's happening here. And as I'm moving through this fucking message, it's just like a schism. Like, what is known? Who is my leader? What is this war that they're talking about? What rivers? All this stuff is just like a riddle.
Yeah, the Max Lebow thing, I would just think someone's just totally messing with me or something like that.
Right, because I was like in middle school. People would be like, elbow, ha ha. So right, I was like, this is someone I know from middle school who is either just a friend and messing with me, or maybe...
Yeah, but when you like read their texts, it clearly, like the grammar's weird. It seems like it's going through a translator.
Yeah, it's this like stilted language. Yeah. Even though it's in English, it sounds, like a Chinese person translating, but also like beautifully. This is poetic, But
it's like also like something you would hear at the beginning of like a video game, something like at the beginning of Legend of Zelda, something to appeal to like a 12-year-old. This is the new schism, right. Things like that.
By the end of the message, it felt like that. It felt like a call to action. So there's this push and pull between like, I'm horrified, this is exciting, and also this is clearly some bullshit.
Right.
And so the first question is, How many people in the world see this message, delete it, report the account, and don't do anything about it? I think that's most people. I think most people just kind of move on with their lives.
Yeah. I mean, if I got this and looked at it, I would probably think that they're going to, tell me about my extended car warranty or try to get some, my social security number out of me. And I probably just would have, I probably wouldn't even reported it. I just would have moved on.
So yes, and the one part that kept coming back to me was my address.
Yeah, I get that.
The two things are that it's someone I know and they're messing with me, or it's somebody who has my address who shouldn't fucking have my address. And I couldn't let that part go because I was like, I live with someone, I'm responsible for them. Cross streets are enough to kind of camp out and wait for you if somebody wanted to fucking stab me, or
Sure.
which makes me want to take some action. All of this is to say that the only logical way forward was to message them, trying to gain as much insight as possible without giving up any more personal information than they already had. What follows are the verbatim messages I exchanged with she on that fateful day. Who are you?
See,
No shit, what do you want from me?
to comprehend.
Comprehend what?
We are working within a system. It is growing.
What system?
We don't know quite if you are working for someone or if this is your own belief. You speak freely of 5G and what you claim to know. The Huawei incident wasn't isolated, and we have our acknowledgements. The system is lapidary. The world around you is changing.
You want my help taking down 5G tech?
In your hallway, on the 7th floor, there will be a clue.
How can I trust you or know that I'm safe?
If there harm to be done, it would have been so. We see you all the time in the green couch, or with the female. There is no harm. If someone were to ask you for the hour on a dollar bill, we would make laughing and tell them how trite such knowledge is. There is more.
Okay, let's pause for a second to put some of this crazy shit in context. First, they're claiming to be harmless, physically, at least. And second, not only do they know my cross streets, but they know the floor I live on and the color of the couch on which I was currently sitting. Can you imagine? The physical sensation of terror that this provoked in me was so intense that I swear I dissociated and was watching myself be traumatized from above. I shot up off the couch as though separating myself from it would give me some sense of control over my life. My heart rate went through the roof, adrenaline filled my veins, and my mind fluttered with the implications of being so intimately invaded. What would you do now?
Did you live on the 7th floor?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
I lived on the fucking 7th floor.
Wow.
And I suppose we can get into this now. So about 2 weeks before this all happened, I was in my apartment with my girlfriend, and I had these big windows, and I lived just a block off the BQE in Williamsburg. And I look out the window and I see a drone, and I know, being a filmmaker, whatever, like, it's very hard to be able to fly a drone legally in Manhattan or in Brooklyn. And so I was like, oh, that's strange. I wonder if it's just some rogue filmmaker being a badass, and I was like, oh, it's over the BQE, kind of. Maybe it's like a traffic thing or something, or police maybe. So I kind of walked towards the window and I noticed it, and I swear to God, I could see the red light, and I was like, what is this doing here? And it was just sitting in place. And so I called over to my girlfriend. I was like, hey, look at that. And I point, and she sees it. She can and will corroborate this story. And the second that I pointed at it, it goes and bolts to the side and then goes up and over my building.
So that definitely seemed like at the time that they saw you seeing them, right?
Yeah, it felt that way, but also none of these messages had come in yet. And so I was just like,
so this was pre-messages?
This was pre-messages.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh, that's weird, but I'm sure it's just something normal. But just for context.
So what were you and your girlfriend doing at the time?
At that point, we were just coexisting in the space, but it will come out that they have seen it all.
Right.
Because these are big windows and, you could see everything. So
full frontal.
Full frontal, yeah. Maybe even full rear too. They get the whole 360.
So were you guys like exhibitionists or something, or like?
No, but I was high enough that I didn't think that I'd have to close my blinds if we're fooling around or if I'm like coming out of the bathroom or something. Right. There wasn't like a building right across the street, so I just kept my blinds open. It was nice. It was good lighting. Nice. It was facing south, and they also got my south facing window.
Right.
So at the time we didn't think anything of it, but now I'm starting to think when they know my floor, they know my building. It popped into my head at this point or sometime around here. I was like, that drone. Not necessarily connecting the dots yet, but I was like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Right, and you do have a green couch, right?
I do have a green couch. I'm thinking, is someone outside of my door? Like, have they been in my building?
Yeah, it's so strange.
I'm horrified, but I'm also trying to hold on to this logical sanity of like, just get to the bottom of this.
So at that time, were you like researching 5G or like, were you a 5G conspiracy tinfoil hat theorist, Alex Jones kind of guy, or like what?
No, certainly not. I mean, I'm an observant person, and I noticed that around the neighborhood there were those like long gray panels that you now see everywhere. And just from a very factual standpoint, that's the hardware for the software of 5G, because 5G has I'm going to butcher this for all the science people out there, but it has a shorter wavelength, and so it can penetrate through harder materials than 4G, but it can't go as far. Is my understanding of it.
Okay.
And so you'll see around big cities, or even I was driving in the desert, and they have those big towers with those long gray panels on them. And I, to answer your question, the only contact I had with 5G was just, I think I noticed that and mentioned it to one or two friends, just being like, oh, look at that.
But it wasn't like you were like writing a script or like...
No, I wasn't. I hadn't Googled it. I hadn't sent any text messages even. I had 2 conversations about it.
So Huawei is the Chinese company that the U.S. has restricted, or how does that come into play?
So the gist is that Huawei is like the largest telecom company in the world. I think the largest.
Yeah, it says that Huawei overtook Ericsson in 2012 as the largest telecommunications equipment manufacturer, and in 2018 overtook Apple as the second largest manufacturer of smartphones.
Yeah, and it's not a secret that the way that things work in China is that everything is the government. Mm-hmm. Even the telecom company is the government. And so our government is not very keen on, in our country or anywhere else, having this 5G technology enabled by Huawei. And so the Huawei incident to which they're referring was the CFO of Huawei, whose name was Meng Wanzhou, who was the daughter of the CEO. So she was arrested in Canada for like this broad allegation of conspiracy to defraud multiple international institutions. Mm-hmm. So they're saying they're responsible for this somehow. They have some kind of like connection to this.
Was there any chance that this was just like your buddy messing with you, or like your neighbor or somebody you knew?
100%. Well, I mean, because I had just moved into this apartment like 2 weeks before then. And so there hadn't been a lot of people who had been to my apartment, but there were a couple people and maybe someone who could have figured it out. But as you will find in this process, every answered question leads to another question without a fucking answer, because you say, okay, I have this friend who's maybe like fucking impish enough to try to pull some shit like this on me, but they're not tech savvy, and or they don't know where I live. And so nothing was lining up.
What is this part about if someone were to ask you about the owl on the dollar bill?
Essentially, they're saying you would make laughing and tell them how trite such knowledge is.
There is an owl on the dollar bill.
There is an owl on the dollar bill.
Which I did not know until you said that.
And conspiracy theorists will say that it has to do with like Bohemian Grove and like this like god Moloch.
What?
I think it's like a Babylonian devil god or some shit.
Yeah, dude, I got no idea.
It's essentially what they're saying is that there's a symbol on the dollar bill that alludes to the fact that the forces who control the money are these like evil, satanic, devil worshipping like politicians and
well, one of the first things that comes up when you Google it is a thing from the CIA website, The Bohemian Grove and Other Retreats, a study on ruling class cohesiveness.
It's pretty wild, yeah.
2,500 of America's richest, most conservative men, including Henry Kissinger, George H.W. Bush, I mean, the Rockefellers, you know?
The whole schlemiel, the Illuminati.
2 former CIA directors.
So yes, it is interesting that it's on the CIA's website. But I think we should also be wary of the things that the CIA decides to deem unclassified.
Sure.
Their job is to lie, and they do it very well. And so maybe they put things out there to make you look over here. And I don't know to what end. I'm not saying they're evil. I'm not saying they're good. I'm just saying, yes, it's there and it's very interesting. And I could cling on to that and say, yeah, see, it's on the CIA's website, so it must be true. But who knows?
Right.
And again, back to G, their point is the whole thing is stupid. The whole owl and the dollar bill is stupid.
Okay.
And you know it. So finally I get to the big question that everybody wants the answer to. Why me?
You are unassuming.
What is the end game here, man? Help me get a grip and calm my girlfriend.
Absolution from the growing pandemic. Great shifts are occurring. You know of them. The girlfriend is peaceful, but she is naive. It is nightfall here. Time is of the essence. We have much work to do.
I have a life. I want to protect my loved ones. I want to help, but I need something to go off of here.
There is no danger. Your life continues. Please explain what you mean by go off of? Our translator gives us error.
Go off of like, I need to know what you want from me. And hey, there's no clue.
The clue will not arrive immediately.
When I heard someone access my electronic key fob earlier, was that you?
There is nothing we want from you. We have access, and this is not our intention to make a disruption. You are in no danger, nor is Lainey.
Give me some information about why this is happening. I understand the metaphors about the world changing, but I don't want to be a martyr.
You will not die. The new technology is a final phase, so to speak. You are intrinsically aware of it. You live in a dense population center, and you see its beginning.
You support 5G? I'd think you'd be against it.
Negative. We are branching out from a development team within the People's Liberation Army Intelligence Division. We are aware of the trajectory and the process in your country, and we also are aware of your standpoint and your position in your society.
You're asking me to align myself with China against the US government? This is some serious shit.
No. Max, pay attention.
Listen, I understand what you're saying about the war on consciousness, but you have to understand my skepticism. This is Instagram. I'm sure you know these conversations can be flagged and acted upon by certain agencies.
We have firewalls. We are concerned with no agencies.
What am I supposed to do? Any logical person would call the police.
All we ask is to remain open-minded to a new way of perception. We mean you no harm or duress.
What new way of perception?
5G technology threatens human consciousness at its core. We have worked closely on its development, and this is why we have broken away. You do not know the extent of its power. It is the final phase. This is what we impart to you. This is the urgency we seek to convey.
Again, I ask what you want me to do. I'm an actor. I'm an artist. I have no technological knowledge.
You have valuable other knowledge. There is nothing to do at this moment. We have a suggested plan of action.
It better be a damn good one, because it seems like you're asking me to do a lot more than send an Instagram message.
We would like for you to meet with one of our agents. We would like to give you 7 days to make your considerations. The crew will not be left. We wish for your safety and room to decide. If you say no, we disappear. You've been aware for a long time of the war on human consciousness. We hear you when you speak, but we seek peace and human clarity. We do not push. If you say no, then we are gone.
How do I know you can protect me if I say yes? And that was it. They left me on red. For now. To recap, this person is claiming to be a part of a group of dissidents of the Chinese military who, upon learning that the technology they were developing was to be used in a war on human consciousness, formed an altruistic rebellion which somehow led them to me. Of course, their story is absolutely bananas, but the fact that they knew so much about me was clouding my judgment, which I knew I couldn't trust under the circumstances. So let's go back and see what insights, if any, can be gleaned from these shocking messages. So why me? I have no fucking idea. I wasn't saying why me, like, why do you want me to fight in this war? It was more like, why are you picking on me, bro? Like, why are you messaging me? Like, why is this happening? And then here's an interesting one. They say absolution from the growing pandemic. Pandemic. Interesting word choice. This happened in 2019.
Oof.
And I've tried to ignore this point because I think it's a Google Translate thing. They're just using the word pandemic. They're hackers, so it's kind of like a virus. Like, but people have pointed that out to me when they've read these messages and they've said like, wait, pandemic, when was this? And all I'm going to say is it was in 2019.
Yeah, that's super strange.
And then something that's interesting, they say that their translator gives us an error. So that's too weird of a detail to lie about, right? To add that in if they weren't using a translator would be a strange choice. So I think it's safe to say they are using a translator.
Yeah.
Which, means that they are not English speakers natively. So that's an interesting point because let's say this is an American pretending to do this. How genius would you have to be to at one point choose something that I say that's like a colloquialism, like go off of, and choose that to say, oh, can you tell us what that means? We need, our translator isn't, like, that's too minute of a detail for anyone, no matter how smart to add. If they're,
I mean, in hindsight and, in real time, it seems they're foreign.
Yeah. So they're definitely foreign and could be Chinese, could be Russian. Who knows? So they said there's going to be a clue on the 7th floor, right? So I'm like, they're fucking in my building. They've disabled the cameras. They've killed the guard and they're standing outside of my door. Is where my head is at. But I'm also debating, like, do I go out and look for this clue that they've said is out there? I'm so fucking curious, but I'm also horrified that someone's gonna, like, chloroform me and I'm gonna wake up, like, with my fucking nipples attached to a car battery in some warehouse.
Yeah, I mean, at that point I would start being paranoid.
A lot of people, when I bring this up to them, are just like, oh, well, I don't have anything to hide. I think we all like to hide behind that like curtain of like, my life isn't that interesting. Maybe I've sent a nude picture of myself or sent a weird text message or something that would get me canceled 5 years ago or something. And we like to kind of be like, it's all no big deal. But when you really put it all together, all of us have said something problematic in a text message or over the phone.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a big part of, Edward Snowden.
Yeah, so that's something that we don't like to think about a lot, but there are data farms where not only what you say on your phone, but just around your phone is recorded because you're giving these apps, and not even in a sinister Illuminati way, in the way that Instagram benefits from analyzing the information you give them access to sell you shit.
Well, yeah, not only Instagram, but like everything.
All of them. And you, without, whether you know it or not, have given those apps permission to use your microphone.
Yeah.
And there's a thing that says, can they listen to it while you're using the app or always? And you don't think what that actually fucking means. That Instagram, if you have that clicked, is always listening. And so when you say, that's the weird phenomenon, when you say, oh, my light bulb's out, and then you get an ad for a light bulb, it's not even that convoluted. That's what fucking happens. They hear that you say that, and then they send you an ad for a light bulb. And so they can store this information too. I mean, and this is just basic.
Right. Okay. So the next message says, we are branching out from a development team within the People's Liberation Army Intelligence Division.
It's the military. It's China's military. And so just from a factual standpoint, they're saying that they're branching out from, which at the time, I wasn't sure if that meant they were like dissidents of the Chinese military or if they were just like, hey, we're reaching out from this, like you would say if you were looking for business and I'm reaching out from Amazon. They're reaching out to say what's up from the Chinese military. And so that's something,
Yeah,
this just took a turn.
Look, I just Googled it and the first thing that comes up is in 2020. Okay. So this is 6 months or so after they contacted you. Officer of China's People's Liberation Army arrested at Los Angeles International Airport for visa fraud. He was arrested at the airport while trying to leave. He worked for the army, but he was presenting himself as something else. But he was essentially, looks like he was a spy. He was a spy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a Chinese military official charged with stealing U.S. data.
Yeah. these are war games. Like this is at the very least a cold war, a cold technological war that's happening right now. And people are kind of aware of the fact that, you know, we're just going back and forth and there's like tech stuff and people are getting hacked, but it's like, it's not a war with guns and bombs, but it's a war. I mean, governments hacking governments. It's just a new playing field. And also just to the emotional side of all this, someone is telling me on Instagram Messenger that they work for the fucking Chinese military or something and are leaving clues in my house and like,
yeah, and like filming you naked,
telling me there's a war. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Bananas.
Yeah.
And sometimes literally that is like, I don't like to use the word crazy. I think it's derogatory, but this shit is crazy. This shit is like, you've never heard of this before. You've never seen this. This is Mr. Robot. This is Mr. Robot. Yeah. So they're not even saying to do something. They're just like, remain open-minded. They ask nothing of me. They don't threaten me. They don't say that. They're just stay open-minded.
No. At this point, they're still like, you know, romancing you.
Yeah. This is the foreplay for sure.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets trippy because they say that there's this new way of perception, which the subtext of me saying what new way of perception was like, oh God, this is the red pill. And I don't mean, you know, how people use it nowadays, but I mean like, uh-oh, you know what I mean? Like perceiving the whole world. So it's a bit daunting, I'll say. And then they kind of explain, they get into what they mean. 5G threatens human consciousness at its core. They've worked on it. Okay, so they're saying that they are not in the Chinese military. They're saying they worked on 5G technology in the military and then broke away because it's harmful to human consciousness. And that I am unaware and they're trying to fucking tell me this. So, pretty Looney Tunes.
Right. Yeah. So it says, we have a suggested plan of action, to which you say,
it better be a damn good one because it seems like you're asking me to do a lot more than send an Instagram message. But yeah, I'm just like, okay, great. Tell me the fucking plan of action. And they do. I finally get what I want. And they're saying they want me to meet with someone in real life.
yeah.
Which is like equal parts horrifying and relief because it's like, okay, that's what they want me to do. Now I can see if I can wrap my head around something like this. Because really what I wanted was not to go along with them. What I wanted was to just get to the bottom of this. And they're like, someone will explain this to you face to face. You have time to think about it. If you say no, we disappear. So they're like,
Right. But they say, look, I'm surprised that you got this far down the rabbit hole with them. But since you're this far down the rabbit hole with them, why weren't you just like, hey, yeah, sure, let's meet down the street. Let's go to the smoothie place.
yeah, no, I mean, that's where we go. I say, you know what? Fuck it. I say, how do I know you can protect me if I say yes? And then that was it. They disappeared. Left on Red by hackers. Despite my constant obsessing on the subject, I just couldn't make sense of it. I needed help. And the very first person that I ever told was my girlfriend, Lainey. In fact, I was texting her as this situation unfolded. After all, we lived together and she deserved to know. Thankfully, Lainey has graciously agreed to recount these events, which most people are happy to leave in the past.
Hello.
Hi, Lainey.
Hi, Max.
Thank you for doing this. I know it's super awkward and weird, but I really appreciate it.
That is okay. It was nice to see a message pop up from you on my phone after quite a while, and I'm glad to be in touch. And yeah.
Awesome. You're the best. Okay, let's just jump into it then. So do you remember that it was even before the messages came in, the day where we saw the drone outside the window?
Yeah. I remember it was like, I remember seeing the drone. I mean, we were pretty high up, so there wasn't much to be distracted by. You know, it's just like sky and buildings, and then a drone right there.
Yeah, and I don't know how you felt it, but at the time it didn't really occur to me as like strange or just like, oh, look at that, what was that? And then it kind of ended, right?
Yeah, I mean, these days I feel like sometimes you're in a park and you see drones flying around, and I guess I didn't really think of it, seeing it flying above, our rooftop area out our window.
yeah, I guess you never know. And then, yeah, so a couple weeks went by, I think. And then I got that message, and I think I recall I called you like right away, and you were at work. Were you babysitting?
Yeah, I think I was babysitting, probably out playing at a park with some kids somewhere in Brooklyn. Yeah, I remember receiving that message. Pretty shocking.
Can you just like walk me through what you remember of like more of like the feelings of it all even? So like I call you and I'm like, someone is messaging me that they're watching, and like what, even from the first moment of like, is this a joke, or I don't know, like how does that all make you feel like play by play?
Yeah, I think that I felt, of course, some fear and just confusion, like how is someone watching us? But also I thought about our apartment, and it was like one whole wall of our apartment was just glass window. And so I was like, okay, well, that could happen. Like someone could be looking in our apartment. I was studying for my nursing board exams at that time. And so I was home a lot, and I just thought, wow, like someone must be watching me then if they can see into our apartment. And I just, you were getting text messages about from whoever that was, that they knew my name and they like spelled it correctly. And they knew that we had like a green sofa chair in our apartment, and they kind of like identified other parts of our apartment or like things that we were doing, or like when we were home and when we weren't. And that really triggered, like that was like really scary for me. So once it got to that level, that's when I was like, okay, wait, we've like got to stop engaging. Like, who should we contact? Like, let's tell your parents. Like, yeah.
Quickly, my understanding became that I needed answers, but that Lainey just wanted out. Perhaps our separate approaches to handling the situation can be understood through the overwhelming differences between where we were at in our lives. Lainey had a clear path toward a fulfilling and sustainable future as a nurse. She had a purpose and a strong sense of her reality. I, on the other hand, had just undergone a radical change in my life, which shook my sense of myself, my reality, and my purpose to its core: getting sober. It had been about a year since my last drink or drug when this began, but a large part of getting and staying sober is learning to let go of your willpower, your sense of how things are supposed to be, and becoming open to how things actually are, practicing acceptance. I'd become so beaten down by my own destructive habits that I was open to changing my life. Maybe too open. I'd recently graduated from an outpatient rehab center to help create a foundation for my sobriety, and my therapist there was so good that I kept seeing him long after I completed the program. I couldn't think of someone more prepared or willing to objectively assess my mental wellness, which you, justifiably, may be questioning at this point. We've kept in touch, and he has agreed to recount these events, which he was a part of from the very beginning. Walker Milligan, my man.
Hello.
Hello. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. We've talked on the phone a couple times, but
it's good to see you as well.
Anyway, this is what we've come here to talk about today. This crazy fucking story that you had a front row seat to from the beginning. Can we say you're cool with your name? Tell me about who you are, what you do, what your qualifications are.
So my name is Walker Milligan. I am in the state of New York. I am a licensed mental health counselor, and currently in the state of Oklahoma, I'm also a licensed professional counselor. In New York, where I was working as a primary therapist at an intensive outpatient mental health center where they worked with substance use.
That's where we'd know each other from.
That's right.
I arrived, when was that? Like,
it was January 4th. Because I remember it was something about New Year's Eve had come up, and so it was easy to remember.
Yeah, that was my last night drinking and using drugs, and so I came in January 4th, 2018. Yeah, because it's been coming up on 4 years.
Oh.
Yeah, very exciting. As I was calming down and starting to get a grip this whole adventure began. So the first time I don't think was the toilet paper time.
That's what I was trying to remember. I was trying to remember if it came up first. But did you show me messages the first time?
Yeah, what I remember was the first time. I think I was like, "Ooh, I got a doozy for you this week," and you're like, in your wonderful, calm therapist way, you're like, "Great, let's hear it." So the first day I showed you the message, and you just read the comment, and you handed it back, and you're like, "Oh, that's strange," and or not in a condescending way by any means, but It was with just that first message. It's weird, but there's tons of explanations, and whatever. And then I was like, what? You didn't respond? And then I was like, oh, you swipe. I was like, there's more. So you read those messages. You're getting to know me. Yeah. Walk me through what.
Yeah. I mean, I think I knew you. I know at that point I knew you fairly well. And again, like I said, I knew you to be an anxious person. I knew you to have some sort of specific manifestations of that anxiety. Because many of us have something happen in our life or whatever, and the part of our brain that produces those chemicals that makes us a little more it's just a little more active, right? And then kind of what's interesting in life is to see how does that come out. One person's worried about money, another person's worried about how they're viewed by other people, another person's anxious about their health, or and you certainly had
all those
a certain set of them, but none of that made me concerned that you had lost grip with reality, right? Or that you were in touch, depending on your philosophy with schizophrenia or hallucinations, that you were seeing a reality that the rest of us weren't seeing, right? And so there was nothing coming into that session that I was like, oh, let me keep an eye out for this. I think you did. I think you were worried about that. And so when I saw that, I mean, it immediately undercuts any sort of argument that you are hallucinating because I can see it. Right. Now it was concerning, not about your mental health. It was concerning because they were concerning messages to receive.
Right.
And which, again, it's like if you're like this, I don't want to act. I want to choose my words very carefully, but your response to them, if you were to be concerned about those messages, that seems like an appropriate response to the presented data, right? And so again, it didn't send up any alarm bells of, oh, he's responding in a way that doesn't make sense to me, right? Like if you had shown me blank screens and said, and told me what you thought you saw, that would have been one thing.
Right.
If you had shown me messages from your dad that just said, hey, I'd love to see you this weekend, and you said, you were reading all these things into it, I might have been more concerned. But it was pretty clearly upsetting stuff.
Yeah, and the only other within those options of what those other things could have been, there were other people. There was a girl I was dating when I showed her these messages since coming to LA, and she snatched the phone out of my hand to check that I didn't also own this other Instagram account and wasn't manufacturing it.
Yeah. I did think about that as well, that was a possibility. But again, that wouldn't lead me to believe that you were hallucinating, right? There would be probably more of a personality disorder type of thing, where maybe histrionic or something, where you were looking for some kind of attention to the point that you would create these accounts. I don't think you had, they didn't have any other, like that you had dissociative identity disorder or what used to be called multiple personality disorder.
Right. So, okay. So we can rule out, hallucination. You experienced this. So you as personal Walker, not as the way that I saw you respond to this. So you see these messages, you get concerned. And then I think that first session we maybe talked about it for a bit, talked about some other stuff. And then I think it was the end of the first session where we stood up and I was like, I don't know if you remember this, but it's burned into my mind what you said. And do you remember what you said?
I don't.
Okay, because it's burned into my mind, and you'll remember when I say it. You said, because we spent a little time trying to understand what it was, trying to figure it out.
I remember what I said.
Yeah, and you said, look, if this is somebody trying to steal your identity, we'll deal with that. If it's somebody trying to take money from you or otherwise, extort you, we'll deal with that. And if it's real, then come and unplug me because I think that's pretty cool.
Yes, I remember that.
We're going to cut this conversation short for the time being, but don't worry, there will be more Walker as the story unfolds. However, before we hear about the toilet paper day and the rest of his experience with this strange trip, I have to explain what happened between those two sessions. When I left Walker's office that day, I had a renewed sense of discernment and faith, and my fear had vanished. I was experiencing, as Walker would call it, radical acceptance. Regardless of who Xi really was or what they truly wanted, I was prepared to confront it head on. So why didn't I just take advantage of Xi's multiple offers to leave me alone with no consequence? That's certainly what Lainey wanted me to do. Besides, it seemed like my only other option was to agree to meet with an agent, and that would be crazy, right? While I was busy debating whether to engage with this insane situation, Lainey was attempting to squash anything even slightly related.
Even like talking about it now still just like freaks me out. But yeah, even after all this time.
Me too.
Okay, so then yeah, I remember was I was going to see Tom, I think, and so I left.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you came home, but I had left and gone to see Tom, and we were texting some more, I think, and you were like, come home, like you like. From what I remember, you like put the blinds on, you're like, come home. And I was like trying to talk to Tom about it because I had an appointment and I wanted to like go out and everything. But so yeah, do you remember that part?
Yeah, I remember that part. Oh, Tom, our acupuncturist. Yeah, I do remember feeling like I do not want to be in this space by myself. Even though, you know, we had a doorman and it was like a very heavy locked door. I felt like who could, you know, break in, but I don't know, key fobs are kind of hackable, I guess. So I was a little freaked out about that.
Yeah. And that definitely occurred to me at one point. I was like, is that because it's not like a regular key? Like, does that make it easier for them to
break
if they
in.
wanted to?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, yeah, I mean, did that like, how long did that like persist for? Or I guess even until now,
well,
like, how long did it take for you to kind of like not be thinking of so much when you were in that space? And then do you still think about that privacy kind of stuff now?
I don't think about that kind of privacy stuff. I feel like I live in a totally different part of the world. Although maybe I should, I don't know.
All fair, obviously. And then, because then I think the way that I remember it and kind of tell me your memory of it was that like you got to that point where you're like, okay, yes, this is serious, like stop and like let's like do what we can to make it go away. And I kind of had this twisted desire, I guess, to like keep learning more because it was so horrifying but fascinating to me as a strange person or whatever. And so what I remember was that I would kind of keep, like there were maybe another couple of days where I messaged them back in New York and it like kind of came up and you were very like, I remember it was the word like obsessing came up. I was obsessing over it and you were like, the obsessing is like intolerable. And correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah.
I definitely remember that. You just could not stop thinking and talking about it. And it was kind of changing, obviously. I mean, if anyone was to keep engaged, like, or not, it was like changing the way you like lived your day, being your partner at the time. I was super frustrated and didn't want to be involved, didn't want to be at risk for some crime or potentially hurt. And so just give it up. But yeah, you couldn't give it up.
Do you find yourself relating more to Lainey than to me? Her desire to protect herself and live in blissful ignorance? Well, you probably aren't here for a story about safety and logic. I'm guessing you're here to see just how far I'm going to go. And in light of that, I have a confession to make. There was a big part of me that wanted Xi's story to be real. The Matrix-level fight for the very soul of humanity? Far-fetched, but even Walker said he thought it would be cool if it was true. I mean, I was a mostly out-of-work, newly sober 27-year-old, and I was currently reshaping my sense of who I was in the world. Combine that with some fear and the fertile imagination of an actor, and you get someone hungry for glorious purpose. What to do? Well, for better or for worse, here's what I did. There I was standing outside my outpatient rehab center, big, dumb, self-assured smile on my face, and I took out my phone, went to my DMs with Xi, and typed one simple phrase that would change my life. I'm in. Before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you for listening to The Final War. It's a very personal story that's taken a lot of time and effort and therapy bills to bring to life. There's still more absolutely insane episodes to come, but I just want to add 2 quick points. One, if you or anyone you know has experienced anything similar and of this magnitude, please email us at tfwpodcastbiz@gmail.com. That's tfwpodcastbiz@gmail.com, as this story is still unfolding and we're always looking for more insights. And 2, I want you to think of just one person, someone who would be really into this kind of story. It could be a friend who's super tech savvy and wants to try to solve this puzzle, someone who's really into human nature or geopolitics and wants to unpack a fringe experience like this one, or just that family member who loves conspiracies. Chances are they've never heard a story quite like this, and it could be their new obsession. Personal conversations and direct recommendations are how stories like The Final War spread. So thank you so much for helping make that happen, and I can't wait to share next week, where we meet a bunch of new characters, including a friend egging me on to go deeper, a tech expert who offers valuable insight into what might be going on here, and a mysterious student who claims to know the hacker and has a dire warning for what's to come. Podcast production by Circleback Entertainment Group and Evergreen Productions. Original music by Choppa Dunks.